It's our final new release review show of the year on news and reviews for TV. We've got Stephen King's The Stand, we've got Bridgerton over on Netflix, The Masked Dancer coming to Fox, and a BBC show that you can stream now on Peacock from a couple of months ago called Noughts Crosses. Let's talk TV. Hey everybody, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. This is going to actually be our last new review show until 2021. I mean, of course, 2020 is wrapping up here anyway in just a matter of hours, but our next show will be the best and worst of 2020. And then we'll get back into new reviews come the new year. Some things in the pipeline at the major networks. I know the new Ted Danson show, Mr. Mayor, is coming out, I think, on the 7th. We've also got the new Mayim Bialik show over on Fox, Call Me Kat. And those will be premiering in just a couple of weeks, among some other shows. But we have 4 final 2020 TV reviews to do for you, which we'll get to momentarily. Not really anything to talk about in the news this week because, of course, all the studios and stuff are shut down for the Christmas break. But one article I did find interesting was about the ratings of this year because, of course, back in March and April, the TV ratings were at a high that they had not seen in a year or two. Many shows getting, their season highs and more than that, a year and a half season highs or whatever, from the pandemic because everybody was stuck inside looking for things to do. But then, of course, as time went on, and number one, people sort of cared less about the pandemic and were going out more. But number two, the TV offerings started to dwindle because, of course, production had been shut down in March. So come the summer and the fall, there weren't nearly as much new content as there usually is. So the ratings, have declined and sort of stayed there in the fall, and a lot of the pundits are saying, well, once networks get back to doing TV shows again and new content, the ratings might skip up a little bit, but for the most part, a lot of people have sort of gone over to the streaming side. Netflix, of course, has no commercials. There's several streamers now with no commercials. Some you have to pay a little bit more for, like Hulu, but for the most part, people are sort of going in that direction. And what does that mean for the networks? So, look, ratings have been declining for years. That's no surprise. The only stations that really had big increases year over year in 2020 were the cable news networks, which of course makes complete sense because it was a huge election year. And other than that, TLC also had a significant gain this year, which I would not have thought of. I don't watch anything on TLC, but they do the 60 Day Fiancé and all of the offshoots of that, and apparently that is a huge rating success. And TLC is the number one cable channel for women 18 to 49. Would not have guessed that. I still would have thought it was like Lifetime or something, but no, TLC has all the women with their eyeballs on there. So, a few sparks of good news, but of course, the TV news networks will return to basically normal-ish numbers now that the election is over, so 2021 is not going to be huge for them, really. People will still tune into them for coronavirus vaccine information and whatever, but, they were getting some of the highest ratings of their histories last year. I know CNN broke its record at least once for highest viewership in one night. I think it was the day after the election or something like that. But anyway, so yeah, very interesting. And obviously a lot of people are watching shows not live anymore. They're watching them on Hulu or on their DVR or what have you within the next 3 to 7 days. So those ratings are all getting counted, but still, even once you add all of those ratings up, they're still not doing what they were, even 5 years ago. So very interesting. It's an ever-changing landscape in these last few years with all the streamers and everything. So with that in mind, let's talk about the number one new show of 2020. And believe it or not, it's The Masked Dancer over on Fox. Yes, it had the premiere just a few days ago. And of course, I do my weekly guess videos for Who is Under the Masks. So even though I didn't really review The Masked Singer already, I did do an 18-minute video talking about it and you know, what happened on the show and everything. So this is going to be focused more on the review side of things than that sideshow is. But if you are interested in The Masked Singer, The Masked Dancer, you can check out my weekly recaps of those shows. But basically, this is the same show as The Masked Singer. It's the same setup. You know, you have celebrities under masks doing something. In this case, they're going to be doing dancing instead of singing. And you have a panel of 4. Ken Jeong back, of course. Fox loves their Ken Jeong. They have him on just about every show now. And he'll be doing the New Year's countdown tomorrow with Joel McHale. But you've got him. You've got Paula Abdul, of course, you know, very much known for her dancing and choreography. Then you've got Ashley Tisdale and Brian Austin Green to round out the panel. And then your host this time is Craig Robinson. It's Nick Cannon over on Masked Singer, but Craig Robinson over on The Masked Dancer. So that's, you know, basically the show. They have, you know, they give you a bunch of clues so you can try and suss out who is under the masks, and then they do their thing. Now here, because the people are not singing, and we don't really get a great sense of their voice, because of course they're, you know, modulated and simulated when they do the clue packages. The panel, when they get unmasked, or before they get unmasked, the panel is allowed to ask one yes or no question each to try and figure out a little bit more who this person is. And also the clue packages, at least for this first week, I found are a lot more on the nose than the Masked Singer clue packages. You know, they're a little bit more vague, and, you know, one thing could mean 50 different things, you know. But here, and I don't do spoilers on the TV news review, so I won't reveal who got unmasked if you didn't see it, but the clue package, if you were paying attention, was incredibly obvious for this one person, which I did not pick up on because I'm used to the Masked Singer being a little more vague and a little more obtuse with their clues. So, look, overall, if you enjoy The Masked Singer, I think you will enjoy this, but I don't think quite as much. I think it is harder because we're watching them dance, and it's like, I mean, it could be quite literally anybody. At least with The Masked Singer, you can kind of pick up on their tone, their voice, what have you, when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, the singing. Dancing, I mean, it could be me under the mask. Like, it doesn't give you any sort of sense of who it is. And I'm not really one for dancing shows. I don't watch Dancing with the Stars. I don't watch World of Dance. So for me, the dancing is virtually meaningless. You know, I like a good guessing game. I like a good mystery. So I like that aspect of these masked shows. But the dancing does absolutely nothing for me. I mean, if you just looked at the person dancing, you could have paid me $1 million and I wouldn't have known who it was. You know, even with the clues, I still didn't. But now that I know they're a little more obvious, you know, I'll be looking out for that. But, you know, look, I think this is a stupider version of The Masked Singer, which I already think is stupid. Now, I watched The Masked Singer, and I love The Masked Singer. I think, you know, it's a fun guessing game. It's, you know, amusing to see the panel sort of going back and forth or whatever. And I do think Nick Cannon's a good host. I thought he was decent on America's Got Talent. I think he's great for The Masked Singer. Craig Robinson is okay, but look, he's new to the gig. He's still, I think, getting his footing maybe a little bit. But the whole concept is just, it's stupid as The Masked Singer is, but then even more so because we're not even seeing them sing. But regardless, I think if you like The Masked Singer like I do, as, you know, I'm not even sure if I would call it a guilty pleasure. It's just, it's a silly show and a silly concept, but I have a lot of fun watching it because I like the guessing and I like the mystery element of it. And, you know, to be honest, I don't think I would find it as enjoyable if I was just sitting and watching it by myself, having my own thoughts, and the end. But because I put up videos for it here on YouTube, and I get, you know, a lot of comments, and we go back and forth, you know, with the conversation and stuff, that makes it, for me, more interactive. I don't think it's the same for everybody, you know. In fact, it's the reason I started doing those review shows, because it was only me and my brother and my one friend that, like, watched it, so the three of us would talk about it, but I wanted to talk about it with many, many more people. So I think if I didn't have that connection to it, I certainly would not feel as strongly about these shows. So, like, for me, because Masked Singer is enjoyable, even though I acknowledge that it's a stupid, silly concept, I would give that, and I've never graded that because that premiered before I started doing these weekly shows, but I would give that, like, probably a B or something. You know, there's a lot of filler that I don't really care for, you know, but I like the clues, I like the mystery aspect of it. I do like the singing. I love singing shows. I used to be obsessed with American Idol. Dancing, much less for me. So I think it's probably a full letter grade below. I would give Masked Dancer a C, because there's still all of that filler. Craig Robinson is, you know, slightly a less competent host, I think. And it's just a much stupider concept. Now, that being said, yes, I'm still going to watch it. Yes, I'm still going to, you know, comment with people about it on YouTube. But if I'm being realistic, I think a C is probably about right for The Masked Dancer. You know, I sort of, you have to sort of grade things a little bit differently from how you personally feel about it sometimes and how competently it's put together. It is a dumb show. You know, and if I didn't have the community on YouTube, I don't think I'd be watching it. I really don't. I think I would wait until, you know, March when The Masked Singer returns. I don't know. So I think a C is actually pretty fair for that show, even though I do have fun watching it. All right, so up next, I guess let's talk about The Stand, because that is such a popular book, and of course the 90s miniseries was very popular, and now we have a new 9-episode miniseries. The miniseries in the 90s, I think, was 2 nights of 2-hour episodes. So that means it's 4 hours total, minus commercials, so maybe about 3 hours and 15 minutes or something. This is going to be 9 hours, and maybe even then some, because I think the second episode was like 1 hour and 5 minutes, so it, you know, they could be longer than 1 hour, I guess, but let's say about 9 hours. And, you know, this will follow the same basic concept that the book did and the miniseries did, by the way, neither of which I'm that familiar with. I sort of knew the basics of the story. I mean, some of the Stephen King really famous works, you sort of know, even if you've never seen it, you kind of know a little bit about the gist of it. So this is basically this disease called Captain Trips kills almost everybody in the world, and so the remaining humans are set up into 2 different factions, basically, or areas. One is in Boulder, Colorado, and there we have Whoopi Goldberg as Mother Abigail Fremantle, 108-year-old prophet, and she, to me, kind of represents, I'm not sure if it's God specifically, but represents kind of, you know, the good side. And then you have in Vegas, you've got this dark man known as Randall Flagg, who's played here by Alexander Skarsgård, and he is known, you know, as the Dark Man. Obviously, he's representing evil. You know, I'm not quite exactly sure if I think it's, you know, God and the devil, but it's certainly good and evil. I think that's, you know, pretty obvious. And this has, you know, a big cast of a lot of famous people. Some are in it as a main cast, some are in just one episode, or maybe on a, you know, slightly recurring status. But some of the main stars, you've got James Marsden, Odessa Young, Owen Teague, Amber Heard, Nat Wolff, and some others. And then some of the guest stars that appeared, at least in the first 2 episodes I watched: Heather Graham, J.K. Simmons, Bryan Cranston. So you've got, you know, a few really, like, heavily involved people, and then a couple just appear for a scene or 2, and then maybe they succumb to the disease so they die, or maybe they exit some other way. But boy, so these are being rolled out once a week, so the only 2 that I could watch are the ones that have already aired. There's going to be another one on this weekend, I think. What do they air on? Let me look here. Fridays, maybe? Thursdays, actually, yeah. So the next one will be up tomorrow. So, look, like I said, I'm not super familiar with the specifics of this book. I know it's maybe King's longest book. I mean, it's over 1,000 pages. And I know my buddy Joe that does a lot of videos with me, he loves the book. It's his favorite of the Stephen King books. and I think he likes the 94 miniseries as well. This is sort of a mess, this show. Like, the most frustrating thing, I think, for me was that they take you into all of these flashback scenarios and give you basically whiplash between present day, 4 months ago when it started. Let's give some people backstories, but then we get some backstories, but then, like, for example, James Marsden's character, what's his name here? Stu Redman, like, his flashback isn't even really his. Like, it's part of a different flashback that is essentially, like, the other people in the flashback are essentially irrelevant, at least so far. I mean, maybe they, not to give spoilers, but they can't come back. So it's like, it's this weird tonal thing that I guess if you read the book, it would make a lot more sense. Maybe if you saw the miniseries in 94, it would make a lot more sense. To me, it was just jarring and confusing. So, and there was no, there was no, like, timeline of, like, 4 months ago, present day, whatever. We didn't know any of that. It was just sort of, taken. Like, Lost, it was a lot easier because, of course, they were either on the island or they weren't, when they would do a flashback. This is just very jarring. One of the things about it was that I'm not sure if this is the time to release this. Like, I know streamers and networks are all looking for content that they've already produced that they want to get out there, and it's great. But, like, I feel like people kind of might want to escape when they watch TV from all of the coronavirus and the deadly stuff that's going on and whatever. So, like, is it a little bit too on the nose to release this at the end of 2020? Maybe. Certainly, things go a lot worse here than they do in the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. I agree with that, but it just seems in maybe poor taste to throw this out there now when there are a lot of people, like, suffering from the COVID, or know people that are suffering from the COVID, and are we going to really enjoy and be entertained by this? I'm not sure. Some of the performances are good. I think, look, James Marsden is always pretty good. I'm not sure what's going on with his accent in this. It's very, very sporadic, but other than the accent, he does a good job. Whoopi Goldberg's great. She's only been, I think, in one or two scenes in each of the first 2 episodes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I saw her more than maybe 3 times, but, look, I love seeing her. I know in the last decade or even longer, she's been more, politically active with The View. So, she's got this daily show that she does. So she's not as, she doesn't act as much. Couldn't think of the word there, but, she does not act as much as she did, back in the 80s and 90s. And I'm a Whoopi Goldberg fan. I always have been. Ghost is one of my favorite movies of all time. I thought she did great there. And, a lot of her less serious movies, Sister Act. And, Sister Act can get serious too, I guess. But anyway, the point is I like Whoopi Goldberg, and she is good here as well. Some of the people, though, are not good. Amber Heard is, I think, terrible in everything. I think she's one of the worst actresses around. I think, yeah, she's pretty, and that's fine. But I don't think she can act. She's horrible here as well. Nat Wolff actually is pretty solid. I didn't even know that was him. He's in jail. I don't think he was even in the first episode. I think we didn't meet him till the second one, but he's in jail, and he's real, like, ragged and stuff. And I thought he gave a very good performance. Skarsgård, of course, giving it his all as Randall Flagg. So my performances aren't really the issue with it. It's more of a question of the timing of releasing this seems in poor taste, and the flashbacks and the constant changing of the timeline and stuff, it's enough to give you whiplash. It's just all over the place and left me very confused about what was going on. Now, does that become more clear by 9 episodes? Maybe it does. I mean, look, in the book that's 11 or 1,200 pages, you have a lot of time to really get to know these characters and dissect a lot of things. but I'm sure in the 4-hour miniseries it was watered down even more. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that was fairly well received though, but here it just I don't know. They've thrown so many people in that just don't matter, and maybe they wanted to give them props because they were in the book, and maybe they had a bigger part in the book, and they were like, well, we got to put them in somewhere and do something with them. But it's like they're here and they're gone, and like gone, like they ain't coming back. So what am I supposed to do with that? I didn't even have time to care about them or know about them. So this is definitely a mixed bag. I'm not super well versed in the King adaptations. I've seen some of the movies, but I was not raised really on like horror shows and movies, and I actually read a couple of the books when I was a kid, but certainly not this one, not any of the super long ones. But I read like the Dead Zone and some of those, but this is, to me, seems very, very middling. I know Stephen King has a stamp of approval on it. Apparently he's written a new epilogue or something that we'll see at the end of episode 9. So, King loyalists, I think, will stick with it to see it through. But, compared to the last King miniseries I watched, which was 11/26/63 with James Franco, which I thought was great. Like, that to me is like an A minus. Like, really loved it. This is really below that. I'm teetering here on some sort of average type grade. I think, I don't know. I guess I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and leave it with a slightly above average C+ for The Stand, but definitely a mixed bag. All right, so let's talk next about Bridgerton. This is currently on Netflix, and it's their #1 show right now. Very, very popular. It's based on a book series from the last 20 years or so. I think the first one was published in 2000, and the most recent one in 2013. And there's maybe 8 books or something in the series. But it centers on the Bridgerton family, and we've got Lady Bridgerton, her 4 sons, and her 4 daughters, and then the Featheringtons are the other sort of main family here, including Lady Featherington, the Baron, and their 3 daughters, Philippa, Prudence, and Penelope. And this is, your typical, London high society type of show. Downton Abbey fans probably will enjoy this. Pride and Prejudice fans will probably enjoy this. But it comes with a little bit of a caveat because it's from the fine folks at Shondaland. Shonda Rhimes has her fingers all over this. She is, I guess, the executive producer or something. But, look, she is known for Scandal and Grey's Anatomy and How to Get Away with Murder. Very soapy shows, a lot of soapy elements, and this is no different. There is a lot of sex in this. There is a lot of gossip and drama and, backstabbing and all of this. And we've got one of my favorites, the great Julie Andrews, is the narrator. She's the voice of Lady Whistledown, who is the author of a scandalous newsletter. So she's got all the dish. She knows all the hot goss, and she lets us know. So, look, this is not the type of show I usually flock to. I didn't watch much of Downton Abbey. I tried twice to watch it, and just the first episode, I couldn't get through 20 minutes. I did watch the Downton Abbey movie, thought it was okay. I gave it a B, but I think at least the movie was sort of boring in parts. I don't usually get into the like high society type things. There are certainly exceptions to that, and I've mentioned them on this show before because I know I reviewed the Nicholas Hoult and Elle Fanning show. I think it's called The Great on Hulu, about Catherine the Great, which I really enjoyed. I loved the movie The Favorite, which is actually, they're both from the same people, so that makes sense. And here I am a little bit higher, I think, than usual as well because of what they've sort of done with the material. So they've kind of pepped up your normal, Lord and Lady type story, and I'm sure that's, Shonda Rhimes' stamp on there. But like when you hear, people playing orchestrally at a ball or something, they're playing violin versions of some of today's hot hits. Like the first episode had Thank You Next in it. One of the Maroon 5 songs, I think it was Girls Like You. So, it's got it's almost like a Baz Luhrmann type of vibe a little bit, like when he did Romeo and Juliet, but made it more, contemporary with Radiohead songs and stuff like that. And the setting was current. Like, this is not set currently like that was, but in terms of the score and the soundtrack and stuff, a little more updated. And here we've dropped sort of the racial boundaries as well. You have black people and white people really mingling with each other and dancing with each other, and more than dancing with each other as well. But one thing that does remain in this world is the female, I don't know if you want to say persecution, but sort of the levels. Like men are up here, women are subservient. That kind of thing. That stuff has remained, and has caused us some interesting gossip and whatnot. If you are a fan of the British things because of the costumes, you will not be disappointed. The costumes are great. The set pieces are wonderful. I don't remember seeing a ton of lush English scenery or anything. Most of what I saw was indoors, really, in this first episode. But certainly scandalous. Certainly a lot of sex going on. Certainly some language. I mean, Downton Abbey was, I think, more maybe realistic to the time in terms of things that people were saying, and insults weren't curse-laden and stuff. They were more silver-tongued. So here, I think we get a more modern-day version of that type of story and setting. I think it works for it. I think people that really are into the British classic stuff, the Jane Eyre type stuff, I think will be very pleased, as long as they're not too sensitive or overly shocked by sex scenes and stuff like that, because there's certainly a lot of them here. In true Shonda Rhimes style. But, for me, for somebody that doesn't really get interested or invested in shows like this, I could actually see watching this. I'm not sure if I will watch more of it, but, I can see myself doing so, because it really does sort of check a lot of the boxes for me. It just happens to be in this old English setting. But I think the choices they made for the most part work for it. The acting is okay. I think some is better than others. A couple of people are a bit stiff. I don't recognize a lot of the people in the show, though. So some of these could be, famous British actors and actresses that I'm just not familiar with, but that, Anglophiles would be like, oh my gosh, it's, so-and-so, I love them. I think mileage may vary from person to person on that, but I thought this was actually very enjoyable. I leave Bridgerton with an A-. So let's close this week with Noughts and Crosses. This is one I've actually been talking about for a few weeks, in saying I really want to cover this show before the end of 2020. The reason is it's been on Peacock since September. It was originally released in the BBC in March, and I watched the first 15-20 minutes of episode 1 back in September, and then I just sort of put it down, didn't finish it, because there was already enough to cover that week. And then I just never really went back to it. And as the weeks went on, I was like, well, it's kind of, a little late now. But look, I figure I wanted to do it before the end of 2020. Everybody's, sitting at home looking for things to stream. So maybe try Noughts and Crosses. So basically, this is also based on a novel series, by the way. Mallory Blackman is the author of the books. And essentially, this takes place in sort of an alternate reality, alternate world type of thing, in which the UK and Europe were colonized by Africa, meaning that the ruling class is actually made up of black people, and the underclass are typically white. So you've got, the Noughts and Crosses, and basically the Noughts are the whites, and the Crosses are black, and they are segregated here with the blacks ruling over the whites. And as we really kind of get into this series, and there's 6 episodes of this total that are all, I think they're all free on Peacock. They must be, because I was able to watch the first 2, and I'm not a Peacock, I don't pay for it. So usually if I can get past the first episode for free and watch a second one, then they're all free. So I think you can watch all of these. But this is a very interesting show. I mean, it's interesting to sort of think about how things really might be different if that happened, and how I may be much less privileged as a white man than I am today. Unlike sort of The Stand, which I think maybe timeliness is in the negative, I actually think Noughts Crosses timeliness is maybe in the positive, and not even just because of the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor protests of 2020, but like obviously this premiered in March before even the pandemic hit. But look, Black Lives Matter has been a movement for years, and obviously racial tensions have been really bubbling, the last few years for sure. And I think now is the time for a show like this where you can sort of flip the script a little bit, and the whites are the underclass and are ruled over by the blacks, and what do they call them? They call them blankers as like an insult. It's kind of like the N-word, I guess, would be, but they call white people blankers if they want to really rile them up, and it works. I would say the weakest element of this show is the Romeo and Juliet style crib notes that just are permeated throughout, because obviously you don't just have race war stuff and racial tensions, you also have the love story, and here of course it is star-crossed in every way possible, a knot and a cross, going in for each other. Oh, we can't have this, and obviously it causes a lot of friction between their two factions, and that stuff is, I would say, the weakest element. It's very routine, very like, okay, we've seen this all a million times before, of course dating back to Romeo and Juliet, and before that I guess probably too, but that's sort of the modern day template anyway. That stuff I could do without, honestly. I guess they need it for some sort of steaminess or whatever, but for me the most important stuff and the most compelling stuff was the racial tension between the two factions, and really being able to kind of put myself in somebody else's shoes, which I've been trying to do a lot more of in 2020. It's sometimes not the easiest, but I think we all need to sort of do that, and kind of take stock of sometimes how privileged we are and we don't know it, and so I thought that was interesting, and it was handled well. I don't necessarily think it was beating us over the head necessarily about it. I think it was a little bit more subtle. I mean, not subtle necessarily, because that's clearly what they're going for here, but it wasn't just browbeating us about it. I think it was doing it with a little more tact than that, I guess I can say. So overall, and the acting, by the way, other than, again, the romantic leads, it's like their chemistry's okay, but the acting is just not all that good. Like, everybody surrounding them is fairly decent. And again, this is a bunch of people I don't really know. I mean, let me read you off some names here. Mazzali Beduza, Jack Rowan, Helen Baxendale. I feel like maybe I've heard of her. Oh yeah, she played Emily on Friends. Okay, that's where I remember that name from. Boy, she looks a lot different now. I mean, I guess this is 20 years later, but Patterson Joseph, Josh Dillon, these are people that are not certainly household names. So the acting is, I think, fine here, except for the two star-crossed lovers. They just don't seem to have that much chemistry with each other, even though they're supposed to really, be at it. But I'm gonna leave Noughts Crosses with a B. I guess I'll just leave it with a B. I was gonna say B minus, but if I give The Stand a C plus, I may as well give this a B, because this is certainly better than just one little notch above The Stand. So I'll leave it with a B. So that will do it. That is the final TV news and reviews new review show of the year. Next week, like I said, will be the best and worst of 2020, and then we will get into season 3 of TV news and reviews. I've been doing this for about a year and a half now. Been enjoying it. Love, trying to dabble in just about everything. And some shows I've kept up with, and some I most certainly have not. But we'll be back in 2 weeks or so with a look at some of the brand new January 2021 shows. But otherwise, we've got a ton of content up on the channel. I mean, I've been posting really every day or two, usually about 5 videos a week. All year. I mean, really, the pandemic, I was doing a video every day, but there's a lot of movie reviews up. I'm going to be catching up on some of the last 2020 movies. I have about 20 or 30 on my list that I'd like to get to before maybe the end of January or mid-February. So look for those reviews. A lot of TV reviews, of course, as always, with some older shows and newer shows. And the Dan Does Disney series continues with some Disney stuff as well. And for now, that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.